I stared at the email on my screen, reading it for the third time to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Due to restructuring, your position has been eliminated. Your last day will be Friday. Just like that. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and missed family dinners reduced to 2 sentences. My hands shook as I reached for my coffee mug, but it was already empty. The office buzzed around me with its usual Tuesday morning energy. People laughed at the coffee station. Keyboards clicked. Phones rang. Nobody knew that my world had just collapsed. I glanced across the room at Melissa's corner office. Through the glass walls, I could see her on the phone, smiling that sharp smile she used when closing deals. My deals, actually. The Hartman account I'd landed last month. The Morrison contract I'd negotiated for 3 months straight. All credited to her in the company reports. All celebrated as her victories. She caught my eye and gave a little wave, still talking on the phone. Friendly. Casual. Like she hadn't just destroyed my career. I joined Brennan Marketing Solutions right out of college, eager and idealistic. The company was mid-sized then, about 50 employees, and they promised growth opportunities. Melissa had been my mentor at first. She taught me how to pitch to clients, how to read a room, how to turn a maybe into a yes. I admired her confidence and her success rate. For the first 2 years, everything was great. I learned fast, brought in small accounts, and slowly built my skills. Melissa praised my work in team meetings and told me I had real potential. Then I landed the Silverton account. It was my first major client, a tech startup with a huge marketing budget. I'd spent weeks researching their needs, crafting the perfect pitch, and building a relationship with their CEO. When I closed the deal, I thought it would be my breakthrough moment. Instead, Melissa presented it to upper management as a team effort that she'd led. I was mentioned as support staff. When I tried to correct the record, she pulled me aside. You need to understand how things work here, Melissa said, closing her office door behind us. Her voice was calm, almost motherly. You're still building your reputation. If we position this as your solo win, people will think it's a fluke. But if it's presented as part of my team's success, it adds credibility. I stood there, confused and hurt, but she kept talking. Trust me, this is better for your career long term. You'll get your moment, but you need more experience first. Let me help you build that foundation. It sounded reasonable when she said it. I was young and unsure of myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did need more time. So I swallowed my disappointment and went back to work. Over the next 3 years, the pattern repeated. I'd land a client, develop the strategy, manage the relationship. Then Melissa would present the results as her achievement. Sometimes she'd mention my name in passing. Usually she didn't. My salary increased slightly each year, but my title never changed. Junior account manager, year after year, while others got promoted around me. The breaking point came with the Hartman Corporation account. Hartman was the biggest potential client in our company's history, a multinational firm looking to completely overhaul their brand image. The contract was worth $2 million over 3 years. Every senior account manager in the company had tried to pitch them and failed. Hartman's marketing director, Janet Chen, had a reputation for being impossible to impress. She'd rejected 12 different agencies before even agreeing to meet with us. I studied everything I could find about Janet and Hartman Corporation. I learned that Janet had started her career in environmental nonprofits before moving to corporate marketing. She cared deeply about sustainability and social responsibility. So I built a pitch around authentic brand values and environmental impact, not just profit margins. I requested the meeting through a contact I'd made at a marketing conference. Janet agreed to have coffee, just coffee, to hear what I had to say. No formal pitch, no pressure. That coffee meeting lasted 3 hours. Janet and I talked about brand authenticity, about how consumers were demanding more than just products, they wanted companies with real values. I showed her examples of campaigns that had succeeded by being genuine and others that had failed by being performative. I didn't push Brennan's services at all. I just listened and shared ideas. At the end, Janet said something I'll never forget. "You're the first person from a marketing agency who's talked to me like a human being instead of a dollar sign. Send me a formal proposal." I spent 2 weeks crafting that proposal. I worked nights and weekends, perfecting every detail. I built a campaign strategy that aligned with Hartman's actual corporate values, not just what looked good on paper. When I finally submitted it to Janet, she called me the next day. "When can you start?" she asked. I nearly dropped my phone. We'd won the Hartman account. I'd won it. I walked into Melissa's office with the signed contract, my hands trembling with excitement. This was it. This was the win that would finally get me recognized, promoted, respected. "Melissa, I have incredible news," I said, closing the door. She looked up from her computer, eyebrows raised. I explained everything, the coffee meeting, the proposal, the signed contract. As I talked, I watched her expression change from surprise to something I couldn't quite read. "This is amazing work," she said slowly. "Janet Chen is notoriously difficult. You must have really impressed her." I nodded, grinning. "I think this proves I'm ready for a senior account manager position. I'd like to formally request a promotion and a raise." Melissa leaned back in her chair, studying me. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Let me think about how to present this to management," she finally said. "This is a huge win for the company. We need to handle it strategically." Something in her tone made my stomach drop, but I pushed the feeling aside. The company-wide meeting happened 3 days later. Our CEO, Richard Brennan, called everyone into the main conference room. "I have exciting news," he announced. "We've just signed Hartman Corporation, the largest account in Brennan Marketing's history." Everyone applauded. I smiled, waiting for my name to be called. "This incredible achievement is thanks to Melissa Torres and her team's tireless efforts," Richard continued. My smile froze. Melissa has been cultivating this relationship for months, and her strategic approach finally broke through Hartman's defenses. This is exactly the kind of leadership that makes our company successful. Melissa stood up, accepting congratulations from everyone around her. She gave a humble speech about teamwork and persistence. She mentioned her team's support but never said my name. Not once. I sat there, invisible, while everyone celebrated my work as hers. After the meeting, I confronted her in the hallway. People were still milling around, chatting excitedly about the Hartman win. I explained how Melissa had "You told them you landed Hartman," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Melissa glanced around at the nearby colleagues, then guided me toward an empty office. "I presented our team's success," she corrected. "You're part of that team." "I landed that client," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I made the contact. I had the coffee meeting. I wrote the proposal. Janet Chen doesn't even know your name." Melissa's expression hardened. "You work under my supervision. Your successes are team successes. That's how corporate structure works." "This is theft," I said. "You're stealing my work and claiming it as your own." Her eyes went cold. "Be very careful about the accusations you make. You're a junior account manager who's been struggling with attitude problems lately. I've been documenting concerns about your team cooperation and professional judgment." I stared at her, stunned. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" she said softly. "You've been territorial about clients, resistant to feedback, and now you're making wild accusations against your supervisor. That's concerning behavior. I reported the situation to HR the next day. I brought documentation, emails showing my communication with Janet Chen, drafts of the proposal with my name on them, meeting notes from my coffee conversation. The HR director, Paul Martinez, listened politely and took copies of everything. "We'll investigate this thoroughly," he promised. "These are serious allegations." 2 weeks later, Paul called me back to his office. "We've completed our investigation," he said, his tone formal. "While we appreciate your contributions to the Hartman account, the evidence shows that Melissa provided substantial supervision and strategic direction throughout the process. The account is appropriately credited as a team achievement under her leadership." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Did you talk to Janet Chen? She'll tell you I was the only person she worked with." Paul shifted uncomfortably. "We felt it was inappropriate to involve the client in an internal personnel matter. That could damage our relationship with them." Of course. They'd never risk the Hartman account by admitting the truth. After the HR meeting, I knew I had to leave Brennan Marketing. My reputation there was destroyed. Melissa had successfully painted me as a difficult employee with delusions of grandeur. But I needed to leave on my own terms, with another job lined up. I started quietly reaching out to contacts in the industry, updating my resume, taking interviews during lunch breaks. Then the restructuring email arrived. They weren't even letting me leave with dignity. They were pushing me out, probably at Melissa's suggestion, before I could find something else. I had 1 week to clear out my desk and say goodbye to 5 years of my life. That Friday, my last day, a few colleagues took me to lunch. They were sympathetic but confused. "I can't believe they're eliminating your position," said Marcus from the creative team. "You're one of our best account managers." I smiled tightly. "Company decisions. You know how it is." I wasn't going to trash talk Melissa or explain what had really happened. It wouldn't change anything, and it would only make me look bitter. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. I sent out dozens of applications and went on countless interviews, but nothing panned out. The marketing industry is small, and word travels fast. Somehow, whispers about me being difficult to work with had spread. I suspected Melissa was behind it, though I couldn't prove anything. My savings dwindled. I moved from my apartment to a cheaper studio across town. I picked up freelance work where I could find it, small projects for local businesses, nothing like the major accounts I'd handled at Brennan. My parents offered to help financially, but I was too proud to accept. This was my mess to fix. Then one Tuesday morning, I got an email from Janet Chen at Hartman Corporation. My heart jumped. I hadn't spoken to her since leaving Brennan. The subject line read, "Urgent, need your help." I opened it immediately. "I hope this email finds you well," Janet wrote. "I'm reaching out because we're having serious problems with the Brennan marketing team." Janet's email explained that the marketing campaign Brennan was implementing for Hartman was completely wrong. It didn't match the strategy I'd originally proposed. The messaging felt generic and inauthentic, exactly what Janet had rejected from other agencies. "Every time I give feedback, Melissa tells me this is what we agreed on," Janet wrote. "But it's not. The proposal you showed me was completely different. I've tried to work with them, but it's not improving. Honestly, I'm considering terminating the contract. But first, I wanted to reach out to you directly." What happened? Why did the strategy change so drastically? I read the email 3 times, my mind racing. Melissa had taken credit for landing Hartman, but she didn't actually understand the strategy I'd built. She didn't know why I'd focused on authentic values instead of traditional corporate messaging. She'd probably handed the account to someone else on her team who'd implemented a standard template approach. And now it was failing. Spectacularly. I sat back in my desk chair in my tiny studio apartment, staring at the screen. I could have ignored Janet's email. I could have let Melissa and Brennan marketing fail with the Hartman account. After everything they'd done to me, I had every right to walk away. But that's not who I am. And more importantly, Janet didn't deserve to suffer because of Melissa's theft and incompetence. I wrote back carefully. Thank you for reaching out. I'm no longer with Brennan Marketing, so I can't speak to their current strategy. However, I'd be happy to discuss the original proposal with you if that would be helpful. I'm currently doing independent consulting work. Janet's response came within an hour. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Same place as last time? The next day, I met Janet at the small cafe where we'd first talked about the Hartman account. She looked frustrated and tired. Tell me honestly what happened, she said after we'd ordered. You pitched me a brilliant strategy, we signed the contract, and then suddenly you disappeared and everything changed. I took a breath and told her the truth. And credit for the Hartman account, how I'd been pushed out of the company, how the strategy had probably changed because Melissa didn't understand the original approach. Janet's expression grew darker as I talked. So the person who's been leading our account never actually developed the strategy, she asked. That's correct, I said. I'm sure whoever's implementing it now is competent, but they weren't part of the original conversations. They don't know why certain choices were made. Janet shook her head in disbelief. This is exactly the kind of corporate dishonesty I was trying to avoid. The whole reason I hired Brennan was because you seemed different. You seemed genuine. I am genuine, I said quietly. But I no longer work there. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Janet leaned forward. What if you did work on the Hartman account again? As an independent consultant. I could hire you directly to fix this mess. My heart started pounding. That would put you in a difficult position with Brennan. You have a contract with them. I threw myself into rebuilding the Hartman campaign. I worked with their internal team to let me worry about the contract, Janet said firmly. Right now, they're in breach because they're not delivering what was promised. I have grounds to terminate. But I don't want to start over with another agency. I want to work with you. She pulled out her phone and showed me the current campaign materials Brennan had developed. I flipped through them, wincing. They were generic corporate nonsense, full of buzzwords and empty promises. Nothing like what I'd proposed. This is fixable, I said slowly. But it would require scrapping most of this and going back to the original strategy. Can you do it? Janet asked. Can you fix this in, say, 3 months? I thought about my empty calendar, my dwindling savings, my tiny studio apartment. I thought about Melissa's smug face when she'd stolen my work. I thought about 5 years of being invisible while someone else took credit for my achievements. Yes, I said. I can fix it. Janet smiled for the first time since we'd sat down. Then let's talk about your consulting rate. Janet moved fast. Within a week, she'd negotiated an exit from the Brennan marketing contract, citing failure to deliver on promised services. She hired me as an independent consultant to rebuild the campaign from scratch. My rate was 3 times what I'd been making as a junior account manager at Brennan. The news hit the marketing industry like a bomb. Hartman Corporation, the biggest account Brennan had ever landed, had dropped them after just 3 months. People whispered about what had gone wrong. Brennan's reputation took a serious hit. Losing a major client is bad. Losing them that quickly suggests fundamental incompetence. I heard through the grapevine that Richard Brennan, the CEO, was furious. He'd been planning to use the Hartman success story to attract other major clients. Now that story had turned into a cautionary tale about overpromising and underdelivering. Melissa, I learned, was in serious trouble. She'd been the public face of the Hartman account. She'd taken all the credit for landing it. Now she owned the failure of losing it too. Lot messaging that actually reflected their corporate values. We created content that was authentic instead of performative, that showed real commitment to sustainability instead of just talking about it. It was the kind of work I'd always wanted to do, meaningful, creative, and genuinely helpful to the client. Janet gave me freedom to implement my vision, trusting my judgment in a way Melissa never had. 2 months into the project, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Hi, this is Melissa Torres from Brennan Marketing. Her voice was carefully professional, but I could hear the strain underneath. I'm calling to see if you might be available for a conversation. I almost laughed. After everything she'd done, she was calling me. What kind of conversation? I asked coolly. I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Could you meet me for coffee tomorrow? The audacity was breathtaking. But I was curious about what she wanted. We met at a corporate coffee shop downtown, the kind with overpriced lattes and uncomfortable modern furniture. Melissa was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked different than I remembered. Tired. Stressed. The confident polish had cracked. Thank you for meeting me, she said as I sat down. I didn't respond, just waited for her to continue. She took a breath. I'm going to be direct. The company is in trouble after losing the Hartman account. Richard is considering significant staff reductions. My position is at risk. I see, I said neutrally. I know you're working with Hartman now as an independent consultant, she continued. I was hoping you might be willing to speak to Janet Chen on Brennan's behalf. Maybe help us rebuild that relationship. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to help you get back the client you lost because you stole my work and didn't understand it? Melissa flinched. I know you're angry about how things ended, angry. I interrupted. You destroyed my career. You took credit for my work for years. You're right, Melissa said quietly, surprising me. I took advantage of your work. I justified it to myself as mentorship or team leadership, but the truth is I was threatened by your talent. You were better at client relationships than I ever was, and instead of acknowledging that, I tried to keep you beneath me. I hadn't expected honesty. It threw me off balance. Why are you admitting this now? I asked. Because I'm about to lose everything, she said. My job, my reputation, probably my career. And I realized that I did the same thing to you. I took everything from you to protect myself, and now I'm facing the consequences. She looked down at her coffee cup. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking if there's any way you'd be willing to help save the jobs of the other people at Brennan. The junior staff who had nothing to do with this. Marcus in creative, Priya in analytics, the whole team. They'll lose their jobs if the company goes under. That was a low blow, appealing to my concern for my former colleagues. What exactly are you asking me to do? I said. Melissa leaned forward. Talk to Janet. Tell her that Brennan has made changes. That we've learned from our mistakes. Help us get a second chance, even if it's just a small project to rebuild trust. I shook my head. Janet trusted me, and I delivered. Then she trusted Brennan, and you failed her. Why would she give you another chance? Because you could vouch for us, Melissa said. She trusts you. If you told her we could do better, but you can't, I interrupted. You still don't understand what went wrong. You think this is about getting another chance, but you haven't learned anything. Melissa's face flushed. That's not fair. I'm trying to make this right. You're trying to save your job, I corrected. That's not the same thing as making it right. We sat in tense silence. Finally, Melissa spoke again. What would making it right look like to you? It was a good question. What did I actually want from this situation? I thought about Melissa's question for a long moment. What did I want? Revenge would be easy. I could watch Brennan marketing collapse and Melissa's career implode. After everything she'd done to me, I'd earned that satisfaction. But that would hurt people like Marcus and Priya, good people who'd just been trying to do their jobs. And honestly, revenge wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined it would be. I want you to tell the truth, I finally said. Publicly. I want you to admit to Richard and the entire company that you took credit for my work on the Hartman account and others. I want you to acknowledge that you pushed me out because I was threatening your position. Melissa went pale. That would end my career. Your dishonesty is ending your career, I said. I'm just asking you to be honest about it. And if I do that, you'll help us with Hartman? She asked desperately. I shook my head. No. I won't interfere with my client relationship to help Brennan. But I will do something else. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I've been getting inquiries from other companies, I said, showing Melissa my inbox. The word is out that I'm the consultant who fixed Hartman's campaign. I've had 3 major corporations reach out this month alone, asking if I'm available for projects. Melissa looked confused. I don't understand what this has to do with Brennan. I'm going to need help with these projects, I explained. I'm one person. I can't handle multiple major clients alone. I need a team. Understanding dawned on her face. You're starting your own agency. I'm considering it, I said. And if I do, I'll need experienced account managers who understand how to treat junior staff with respect. I'll need people who value honesty and collaboration over ego and credit stealing. I let that sink in. If you tell the truth about what happened, if you genuinely take responsibility and help make sure the people at Brennan are treated fairly during any restructuring, then I'll consider hiring some of them for my new agency. Not you, I added quickly. But the others. The people who deserve better than what they're getting. Melissa stared at me. You do that? After everything? I'd do it for them, not for you, I clarified. Marcus, Priya, and the others are talented people who got caught in a bad situation. They deserve opportunities. Melissa was quiet for a long time. I could see her weighing her options, calculating the costs. Finally, she nodded. Okay. I'll tell Richard the truth. All of it. In front of the whole company, I insisted. The same way you took credit in front of everyone. She winced but nodded again. And you'll really hire some of the Brennan staff? If they want to work with me, yes, I said. I'm meeting with a business attorney next week to set up the company structure. I'll be ready to make offers within a month. I stood up to leave, then paused. Melissa, I hope you learned something from this. You're smart and talented. You didn't need to steal credit from others to be successful. You just needed to be honest and lift people up instead of pushing them down. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I am truly sorry. Melissa kept her word. She called a company-wide meeting at Brennan Marketing and confessed everything. She admitted that she'd taken credit for my work on multiple accounts, including Hartman. She explained that she'd pushed me out because she felt threatened. She took full responsibility for losing the Hartman account. I wasn't there, but Marcus called me afterward. It was brutal, he said. Richard was furious. But also, I think some people respected her honesty. It took guts to admit all that publicly. What happens now? I asked. She's being let go, Marcus said. But Richard is trying to save the company. He's offering severance packages and helping people find new positions. It's better than it could have been. 2 weeks later, I officially launched Chin Marketing Strategies. I named it after Janet, who'd given me a second chance when I needed it most. My first hires were Marcus, Priya, and 3 other talented people from Brennan. We rented a small office space and started taking on clients. The Hartman campaign launched to incredible success. Their rebrand was featured in marketing publications as an example of authentic corporate messaging. Janet wrote me a glowing testimonial that I used on my website. 6 months after leaving Brennan Marketing, I was running a successful agency with 12 employees and 6 major clients. We had a company culture built on honesty, collaboration, and giving credit where it was due. Everyone's contributions were acknowledged. Junior staff were mentored and promoted based on merit. It was everything I'd wished Brennan could have been. One afternoon, I got an email from Melissa. She'd found a position at a smaller marketing firm, working as a regular account manager, not a supervisor. "I'm learning to do the actual work instead of just taking credit for others' work," she wrote. "It's humbling, but I'm better at my job than I've been in years. Thank you for forcing me to face the truth about myself." I wrote back briefly. "I'm glad you're doing well. Good luck." I didn't need her friendship or ongoing updates. But I was satisfied knowing that she'd learned something, that maybe she'd treat the next talented junior employee better than she'd treated me. As I looked around my office at my team working on campaigns we'd built together, I realized something. Melissa had tried to steal my success, but she'd actually given me something better. She'd pushed me out of a place where I was invisible and into a space where I could build something of my own. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success.